Welcome to the CSR A Walk for Water podcast, where every step we take and conversation we have starts with a mission: safe water for all.
Hey, everybody, welcome. My name's Jeff. I'm here with the CSRA Walk for Water podcast. This is a glimpse inside of Walk for Water. It's a glimpse inside Water Missions, the nonprofit out of Charleston, South Carolina, that Water Mission that the Walk supports. And you guys are going to have that awesome opportunity to today take a trip. Okay, take a trip in your mind to someplace, another context, another place that's probably totally different than yours. And none other than our tour guide here today for this trip is Miss Mary Howell. Mary is the senior manager of community engagement. And so the bigger the title, the more important people are. And so, Mary, you've got to be foundational. You got to be a big deal over there at Water Missions. Thanks for joining us today.
Jeff, you are way too kind. I love it. Thanks for having me.
Well, we appreciate your time. As always, we got producer James slow on the button to say hey. And so,
Hey.
yeah, okay. Again, we got to polish. Okay, we want this to be professional, and we know who the weak link is in this call today. So, with that being said, Mary, again, thanks again for taking your time out. Talk to us a little bit. Let us get to know you just for a minute. Your journey, who you are, where you're from, and also how did you first get connected? What drew you to Water Missions? I know you've been there like how many years, and just kind of walk us through that journey for you personally.
Absolutely. So I've been with Water Mission just over 4 years. I joke with my family that I had my midlife crisis and it could have been a lot worse. And instead of going and buying a new car, I chose to leave my career leading a cybersecurity company where I was the COO and CFO for several years and come join Water Mission and really find a place that I was called to be where I could serve and hopefully impact lives all over the world. So Water Mission has been an organization that I have known for years. A friend of mine that I was serving on another board almost 20 years ago, he had shared who Water Mission was and what they were starting to do way back in the early days. And it wasn't something that was really tangible to me. But then when I had kids, I started doing walks for water with my kids when they were little and watching them pick up buckets and walk. Watching them read fact signs along walks and start to really get a small, tiny glimpse at what kids their age would be doing all over the world. So I had done those walks, and when the Lord just tugged on my heart that it was time for me to make a change in my career, I reached out to Water Mission and some contacts I knew over here. I'd had the opportunity to meet Molly earlier and get to know her. And I reached out to a woman who was working here at the time and said, hey, what do you have open? I'm ready. I feel like the Lord's calling me. And I joined Water Mission, the reverse of the hiring process that we have here, and kind of started top down and worked with different leaders and eventually ended up with the HR department and had an interview with them and have been here ever since. So the opportunity was to lead Charleston Engagement. And I am passionate about helping other people find where they're called to serve, to volunteer, to give, to pray, to really focus their time and their skills and their talents. So it's been an incredible 4 years that I've had here.
You said you were walking. When was your first walk? Like, how many walks did you do with your kids before you made the transition?
It's interesting. I think I did 4 or 5. They were kind of blurry when the kids were little. And then COVID hit. I remember doing the COVID walk in my neighborhood. So I don't really count that as one of the walks.
Right.
It was fun. We all put on our orange t-shirts and walked around Charleston, a little bit lost and not sure of what was going on. And then the next year we were spaced apart. So that would have been probably number 6. And I remember my daughter having a bucket on top of her head because it was a very cold day in Charleston. And I think it was somewhere in the low 40s, maybe even upper 30s that morning, unseasonably cold. And so she was using that as her hat. And then 2022 was the first walk I had the opportunity to be working here.
Okay. So forgive me if the timeline is blurry. If I get something wrong, that's what James is for, to edit. this all out. His job is to make me look good. It's hard. That's why we have him here. So roundabouts 2016, right? You
Mhm.
go on your first
Yeah.
walk with your kids. Uh, Now fast forward to last summer of 24. Okay.
Yeah.
You find yourself in a fully different context. And again, I don't want to mess up the details, so I don't want to give anything away because I will mess up the details. But this is an interesting topic. I mean, I'd love for you to share some thoughts about how you go from 2016 to 2024. Now you find yourself on the other side of the world, really partaking in some amazing events and meeting some amazing people. I'm going to just let you kind of share some of your thoughts, and then if you could just
Absolutely.
tell us more about what happened last summer, that'd be amazing.
Yeah. So last summer, I had the incredible opportunity to go to Kenya. Kenya is one of Water Mission's country programs where we have permanent offices and permanent staff that work there. And going to Africa had been something I wanted to do since I was a little kid. I don't know why, but it was a place that I wanted to see and explore. And I've seen other projects and areas that Water Mission had in Latin America, but Kenya was different. So I got to Kenya in May of 2024 and had the opportunity to go with our Marcom team. So we were just going to get to know communities who were either in the middle of getting safe water, so they knew who Water Mission was. They could see our tangible work in their communities. We went to another community that's had water for a couple years. And then the last place that we visited was a community that was just on the cusp of starting their first assessment. When we got into Kambu, which was one of the main communities we got to know, I met Celestine. Celestine was 6. She blew my mind. At 6 years old, it was her job to wake up in the morning, walk on a dirt path from her home through the center of a very small town in Kambu, then get to her school, 1.5 miles every morning at 6. She was by herself, but this was her normal practice. She would have her entire school day. Then she would leave school and she would leave with a few of her friends, and they kind of dropped off when each one would go their separate direction leading to where their home was. And she would walk that full 1.5 miles home. It was hot. It was dusty. There were many stretches where you wouldn't see any people or anything, but this is the job of a 6-year-old. Then she would get home, change out of her school uniform, and pick up a jerry can and start walking to collect water. At 6 years
6?
old.
Can
I
she
mean, we're
even
talking.
carry the water? I'm not.
So her jerry can was about half the size of mine.
Yeah.
I picked up a jerry can that was around 10 liters, and hers was about 5. Excuse me, mine was 20, and hers was about 10. So I had 44 pounds on my back, and she had a little under 20 when we were walking back home after filling it up. But from the walks that I'd done with my kids, it wasn't even comprehensible what it really is like for kids all over the world who have to collect water every day. I never imagined going to a place where we collected water. Now, Celestine would go to what was known as the River Kambu. And the River Kambu, when we got there, it was the end of the rainy season, so it was a dry riverbed with small amounts of puddles and water that was still in there. So the first thing you have to do when you get there is you hand dig a well, and you hand dig until you have enough water in this small pool that you'll be able to fill up your jerry can. Then you take the little cup container that you have with you, skim off the top, take the slimy stuff that's on the top and toss it over your shoulder. Then you fill up your jerry can and take it home. Now, when Celestine and I got to that river, we picked the spot where it was easiest to hand dig that little well, and probably 20 feet to my left were 2 cows. that were also drinking in a hand-dug well that someone had dug earlier in the day to fill up and take back to their family. But these cows are drinking water, they're going to the bathroom, and that was technically upstream. So them going to the bathroom, all of their waste is coming into the water we were collecting, even that morning. Now, this is something that Celestine did without even thinking. You know, she walked to the river swinging her jerry can, kind of kicking rocks here or there. She's a normal, happy, sweet girl. I had the chance to teach her how to blow bubbles. I had the chance to play little games with her with a ball she had near her house. But Celestine's life was so much different than I could have fathomed because the water was full of parasites, bacteria, disease, and that was her only option until Water Mission came into that community. Celestine blew my mind. She not only loved Water Mission, loved the work that we did after spending time together during that week and really immersing herself into what we were doing and why Water Mission was bringing safe water to her community, why we cared about a community across the world. Celestine decided that when she grows up, she wants to work for Water Mission. She wants to give back to kids like her that were getting sick from the water that they drank. Celestine missed school every single week because she would have stomach aches, she'd have diarrhea, she'd be very sick before she had safe water. And that's something she didn't want any other kid to have to deal with. She was one in a million, to say the least. Now, I also had the pleasure of walking with Lucy. Lucy was a mom. She had a couple kids already, and Lucy was 8 months pregnant. So Lucy would walk twice a day. Now, since it was her 8th month, she would carry a jerry can that was a little bit smaller. Just, you're 8 months pregnant. I have 2 kids of my own. I've been there. I don't think I would have enjoyed walking at any point in time to collect water, but this is something Lucy literally did twice a day because the container that she had was fairly small. It was around 10 liters. That wouldn't be enough for her family for a day. So she would do the trip multiple times. So Lucy and I went for a walk, and she walked to a different area. Instead of going to the river Kambu, she went to a spring that was located closer to her house than the river Kambu was. And to get to that spring, you had to walk down a hill and cross what was a muddy, old, dried up river of sorts. And you knew that it wasn't just mud from dirt, it was from animals and everything else. And that was a very interesting walk, to say the least, because as we are coming down the side of this hill and kind of going around this muddy area, they had 3 small stones that you had to step on to cross the mud. And I am apparently not the most coordinated when it comes to walking down mountains to collect water with a jerry can. Lucy was ahead of me, and I just slipped on one of those stones with the mud and ended up with my legs covered in mud. And we all had a good laugh. But this is something that Lucy had to do at 8 months pregnant every day. So once you got past the stones and I was covered in mud, then you walk around a grassy hill to the base of this other area. And then you eventually climb down and walk across a little riverbed type area and around to the spring to fill up your jerry cans with water. And the water still wasn't treated. And here's this beautiful woman who's 8 months pregnant. Now, the coolest thing, when I walked with her, there was no safe water in Kambu, but by the time her little baby was born, Lucy had safe water.
Oh,
While we were in
gosh,
Kambu,
that's amazing.
we got to see the
That's
maternity
amazing.
ward in that community. That was extremely eye-opening. Women are required to bring roughly 5 gallons, 20 liters of water when they come to give birth. And that is the entire amount of water they will have for cleaning, for caring for that baby, for taking care of themselves after giving birth.
Wait, so you're saying that in the hospital setting, you have to bring your
Mhm.
own water,
Yeah.
and that's the water that you get to use for,
Mhm.
oh my gosh. Okay.
So
Wow.
the hospital had water that had been trucked in, and they would fill up a tank that they had. But even though the tank said safe water, as the doctors and nurses shared with us, the water wasn't treated. It wasn't actually safe. So it wasn't something that they could rely on. The water that moms before Water Mission came in there, the water that they had was also not safe. But I was able to see the tap stand where Lucy filled up her jerry cans when she needed to go give birth, because that tap stand was there. Water Mission had it ready, and it was so close to the front doors of that maternity ward that they could just fill up the water and have it available. And when they needed additional water, it would also be there accessible for not only moms that are about to give birth, but to other individuals who needed medical procedures, to kids who are sick, to families that needed help. One of the physicians shared with us when they had to do surgery, they would puncture one of the saline bags because that was the only water that they knew that was safe, that was clean, that could clean that surgeon's hands. Water Mission was able to do so much more than just even provide safe water for Celestine, safe water for Lucy, but safe water so physicians can care for a total community. It was eye-opening. It was beautiful. It was hard, but there was so much hope and joy that the members of those communities saw with Water Mission being present and willing to walk alongside them and willing to be there through the entire process. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
the second community we went to, um, that was funny because I was a little bit less than enthusiastic, shall we say, to go to this community because Mwataneni already had safe water. They had had water for 2 years. And my heart was aching for these kids that didn't have safe water. But it ended up being the biggest blessing to see the process full circle. When we got to Mwataneni, it was another community high in the mountains, and we spent a lot of time with a woman named Elizabeth and her daughter Mercy. Now, Elizabeth shared with us all of the challenge that she had before safe water. She was struggling with things like depression because she would walk to get water multiple times a day. She would leave in the morning. She wouldn't come home till late at night. She wasn't around for her kids. Her kids didn't have meals during the day. They didn't have meals to take to school because she was always busy walking for water. It had caused her and her husband to be estranged. Because if you think about it, the global water crisis is not only a health problem, but it creates emotional strain on families. When women are gone all day, sometimes late in the evening, waiting in long lines to collect water or searching for water in places that, it's dry. There's a lack of trust that comes and happens in families. And so you see situations like Elizabeth and her husband who had become estranged because of the fact that she was gone so much. She wasn't there to care for the family or to be part of it because she spent all of her time walking for water. And the water that she collected made her kids really sick. And Water Mission came in and put in a full project for 9,000 people in Mwataneni, and it was completely transformative. So not only was Elizabeth no longer walking to collect water, the water source where she went previously was it was a borehole that was owned by someone who required them to pay so much per liter of water. And now Water Mission's there. And while they're still paying Water Mission, it's less than a 20th of what they were paying this other gentleman. So they're saving money. And Elizabeth started joining a group. So they have what they called women's support groups. It's not like anything we would think of in the United States. It was a group of women who met every Tuesday afternoon, and they would all bring so much money, and they created their own microloan system. So they would all put that money in a pot, and they would each take a turn taking home the money. And then they would use that in ways to invest for their families for a better future. Now, Elizabeth, she was an entrepreneur, which blew my mind. And she sat there with such poise and grace as we talked. You would never have known the struggle she went through. Elizabeth took the money that she got from that small group of women that collected funds together, and she opened a fry shop. So she had a potato French fry shop in the middle of town where she would go every evening and sell French fries. This ended up becoming extremely successful. So she took revenue from her French fry shop. She invested some of that into more plants and agriculture in the farm that was around her house. So she grew these oranges. They were called pixie oranges. And let me tell you, that was the only fresh fruit that I ate the entire time I was in Kenya. These oranges, we sat outside of Elizabeth's house. She went and got some safe water from her jerry can, washed off the oranges, cleaned her knife, sliced up the oranges. They were incredible. So she grows these pixie oranges, sells them to Nairobi, and they have a distributor that comes up, picks up the oranges, and takes them into town. Every single week, they come and collect them during harvest season. So she took that money, the money from her French fry shop, as she kept saving, and she ended up building a new home for her family. A home that had a complete concrete floor, a home that had beautiful bricks, a home that was safe. Elizabeth's husband ended up returning, and then he started focusing on the farming and was growing out the farming. So they also had corn, they had some goats, they had some cows, and they were making that portion prosper. Then the coolest thing that Elizabeth did, she found a young boy that lived in her community not too far away, and she started paying him a few shillings to collect water. So she didn't even have to walk the 5 minutes to collect water from the water mission tap stand. She gave that to a boy so she could save her time and use it for things like the French fry shop, caring for her family, taking care of other things, and then give this boy some money so he in turn had resources, had a small job, and could help his family out. The trickle-down effect of safe water blew my mind. And there was no question why I was there. The impact that I saw was phenomenal, even down to the laundry that was hanging on the clothesline in Elizabeth's yard. She had white shirts. And when you think about being in a dusty community on a mountainside in Kenya, where there's no running water, certain things are limited, she was able to do such excellence in her laundry skills, making sure that clothes were washed and shirts were still white. It blew my mind. And her daughter, Mercy, was so sweet. She was thriving in school. She sang in her local church. She loved being part of the choir. And instead of being sick, instead of being home, instead of all the challenges that she dealt with when they didn't have safe water, she had a chance for a future. She had a chance to think about, what do I want to do when I grow up? How am I going to have a family, take care of kids, do all of these things after getting an education, all because safe water makes it possible. So Wataneni will always have a special place in my life. And then before we were getting ready to head out, we had the chance to go to one final community. And that community was one that Water Mission was just starting the assessment phase. And we ended up meeting a woman that lived in that community, and her name is Esther. And we met her daughter. Her daughter, Josephine, was 10 years old. And Josephine literally broke my heart in two. Josephine was not supposed to be home, 10 years old. She should have been in school. Josephine was very, very sick. and she had this threadbare blanket wrapped around her. She had a fever. She was cold. And it's in the mid 90s, so you wouldn't expect to be too cold. But giving Josephine a hug and spending some time with her, her arms were just so tiny. And her mom was so sad because she couldn't care for her kids. Josephine had a little brother named Onesimus. He was just under 2 years old at the time, and got to spend some time with him as well. But their mom, Esther, was gone literally from before the sun came up until late in the day, because again, there was one borehole. You would walk 4 kilometers down this mountain, wait in a very long line for the gentleman who owned the borehole, and you would have to pay him all the money you had pretty much to collect water. And then you walked up the mountain. And the process of walking down, waiting in line, and then walking all the way back up would take an entire day. And Esther didn't have funds. She didn't have money enough to provide her kids with breakfast. They didn't have any food when they went to school for lunch. And the schools didn't have any water of any sort or tap stands or anything like that. So the only meal they would have every day was at night at dinner time. And that just broke me. Josephine is so beautiful. And I can say the word is because Water Mission turned on a water system in her community only a couple months ago. And the entire team, there were 4 of us there. And the joy that we all felt when we saw the pictures of that commissioning, knowing the struggles that community went through, but also spending time at the school and getting to see all of the kids that had the hope. The crazy part is they had solar panels that another nonprofit had started a project and never finished and left. They had a borehole that had been started but didn't have the right yield. They had all of these portions that had been started, but no one took the time to really create a project with excellence, with integrity, that was going to last and was going to serve this community for decades until Water Mission. And so they knew that we were there. They knew that there was hope and that we weren't going to leave till they had safe water. So, yeah, to say the least, Kenya just is a place that I treasure in my heart. I'm forever grateful, and it has given me a new fire to do my job because I want to share how incredible the work of Water Mission is and what an impact we can have here through programs like the Walk for Water. We pick up a bucket and we walk around 3 miles. Halfway, we fill it up with dirty water. We walk back. We're having fun. We have bands. We have music. I love the CSRA marching band. That was one of the most fun things when I got to attend. And we just have a great time together. But we can't even fathom the lives that are going to be changed because we're willing to pick up a bucket. And it's beautiful and it's incredible. And every time we hold a walk, we welcome people to think about what the global water crisis is and how they can help make a small change. Every time we do that, there's a life that's going to be changed. $50, that number blows my mind. Every $50 Water Mission raises, we are able to change a life. This could be a kid like Josephine that's homesick, that has parasites, that's dealing with stomach issues and disease. And this is a kid that might not think they have a chance. But because we're willing here to pick up that bucket, they have a chance. What a sweet opportunity we have here. Okay, Jeff, what questions do you have for me?
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
You took Jeff's last question too, Mary.
Yeah. Well, I'm just speechless because gosh, thank you. I mean, you just thank you. Thank you. I mean, I've been to water missions a couple times, and I've walked through and seen pictures, and and I kind of build it as you're taking us on a tour, and man, you did. And it's I guess the one thing that I thought was there's so much more than water and drinking and cooking and bathing, which is huge. But there's the hospital, there's the
Hmm.
emotional, and there's a word you used several times. And I don't know if you know you used it. I know you did. I know you did it on purpose. It's hope.
Oh,
And
okay.
and the picture you painted was these villages, these people had lives of, and I haven't been there, so if I'm wrong, you tell me, but had experienced global in every part of their life,
Mm.
just despair in relationships and time. And but when you think of water missions and just any organization that comes in and provides clean water, that despair from an entire community is pulled away and hope flows. And gosh, the story again, like you told the story of like, oh, here's a village that already has water, and I'm thinking, okay, who cares? But to see what happens when
Mhm.
despair is replaced with hope.
I didn't even get to tell you guys about the pastors that I met. So when I was over there, you don't even have to use this, but in Kambu, we had these. So I took some Bibles with me just for fun. I took 6 Bibles that were in Swahili, thinking that I might be able to do something with them. And God works in sweet ways. So I got to know um, one gentleman who ended up being a local pastor. They were all meeting to do a training session outside of a restaurant where we were eating lunch one day. And it turned out he was the husband of the woman who was teaching Celestine in Kambu. So that gave us credibility with her teacher when we wanted to go check out the school. And then that afternoon, I ended up going and talking to these 3 pastors that are in Kambu. And we were talking about all the different ways that they've started working together. So when Water Mission comes in and does a safe water project, we also have the opportunity to walk alongside and equip local churches with living water. So we share our living water modules that really help give biblical foundations for the gospel to pastors that may just have learned and kind of grown through hearsay, through generational conversations and teachings. So they actually get to hear the gospel, learn the gospel, know the gospel. We're able to give them things like audio messenger Bibles. Well, I started talking to this one pastor, and he's telling us how the Living Water program is uniting the 9 churches in Kambu. And before Water Mission came in to do safe water projects or anything, each of the 9 churches kind of was in its own silo. And their families were their families. They didn't go outside of their church. They stayed inside of their church. When they would worship, when they would do anything, it was just each church was its own entity. And as they started doing the Living Water program, they started to think, oh my goodness, how can we work together? We are all one church, all sharing the love of Jesus. So this pastor comes over and we're talking. And I said, how has this impacted you in trying to learn more? And he said, well, we've really stepped up and we've started to learn, like, it's our job to help the needy. And I felt like it was a mic drop. He's like, wait, I'm standing here in a community without safe water, without running water, without anything. It's your job to help the needy. I'm like, okay, this is going to be good. How do we help the needy? You know? So he says that the churches all got together and every month they would do kind of bring together the whole community in the center of town and share the gospel. They would take turns sharing the gospel, but they needed to do more. So they got to know a woman who her grandson came to live with her because his parents had died in an accident. And she was an amputee. She wasn't really able to leave her home. She couldn't afford to send him to school. They had limited water, limited food. So the churches all decided, we're going to take care of her. So the churches alternated which week they would pay for her grandson to go to school. They alternated who would bring water to this woman, who would physically carry her to the center of town to get out of her home and be able to fellowship with other people. And like, it's our job to help the needy. And here I am thinking, man, what are they going to do? And I'm like, how can I now do that? I was so inspired by these pastors because they truly understood what it was like to have a servant's heart. And I felt like I'm not doing anything, but man, I can learn from these gentlemen, from these women who are leaders in their churches and really are taking the time to serve the poor, to serve the needy, to care for the widows, to care for the orphans. And it was something that I couldn't even fathom, that all came again from water, because not only are we doing safe water to drink, to clean, we're doing living water, which is really the heart and soul of the gospel of Jesus. So that was a pretty incredible opportunity as well. There's your bonus.
That was a bonus. That was
Sorry,
totally
you
a
guys
bonus.
started recording or doing whatever. And I'm like, no, wait a second. I thought this was just going to be fun.
No, listen, I just want to stop and just praise the Lord. Praise the
Oh my
Lord
gosh,
for
you said it was seriously the biggest mic drop moment, because I'm like, okay, I'm here in an impoverished country. The pastors are impoverished. They don't have Bibles. They don't have tangible anything. Their churches are buildings without windows, without much more than a few wooden benches. And they are the ones who have so much to give, and they are giving it all sacrificially with nothing expected in return, just with a heart to love others. Man, it was beautiful.
This has been amazing. I mean, this has been unbelievable. I am so thankful that for once I shut my mouth and let the Lord work through you. Uh, Mary, thank you so much. I mean, thank you.
Anytime. I'm here.
And again, the hope is that, we've talked about multiplying in the last podcast. We talked about multiplying here. We talked about the churches multiplying, and just seeing that. And my prayer is actually that your stories here today will be multiplied. We're putting it on the internet, and we're expecting 60, 70 million views. Okay. Mr. Beast numbers is what we're expecting and so, all kidding aside, my prayer is that, the stories that you have brought here today will impact hearts and
Absolutely.
and will bring praises to our Lord and will motivate and drive people out of compassion and out of empathy and out of just that spirit of we have to take care of the needy.
Yeah.
It's our job.